You own a small business, and it ain't easy, and it may be going okay. Or you could be stuck and barely making ends meet. It's about time for a pivot. Welcome to Small Business Pivots. It's time for you to generate some cash, some real cash. How does $1 million sound? Only 9% of small businesses earn over $1 million annually. But your host is a business coach and an entrepreneur. And we're going to talk to the small business owners who've done the $1 million and more. It's time to be inspired. Welcome to the 7-Figure Club. This is Small Business Pivots. And now your host, Michael Morrison.
All right, so today I've got a special guest and I've got a special question for that guest. So if you were to describe your life today in one or two words, what would you say?
If it's 2 words, I say thankful. My second will be blessed. So
thankful and blessed.
Yeah.
So you're a small business owner. You're the owner of the world's most trusted name in moving, Bigger, Better Movers, right?
Yes, sir.
And you've owned that company for?
I started that in 2017, so going on 6 years right now.
6 years, and you have how many? You have a fleet of vehicles now. How many do you have?
We've got 9 total. So.
9 total. So blessed, and what was your other word? Thankful?
Thankful, yeah.
Thankful and blessed, but for most small business owners, I know it's not always been that way. So let's take a little skip back to your early childhood and kind of give us your upbringing so the rest of us can catch up and kind of follow your journey.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up with a single mom. I remember in 1995, we bought a trailer and moved to a town called Edmond, which is right outside of Oklahoma City. And, never really found a comfortable place, I guess, growing up for a long time. I was ashamed and embarrassed a lot growing up because we grew up in a trailer. If you know anything about Edmond, it's supposed to have a little bit of money there. And
yeah.
So I grew up in a trailer from 1995 to 2007. So we lived there for literally my entire childhood growing up with a single mom. And so, when you grow up with a single mom in a trailer and there's not a lot of money, you become resourceful. So part of entrepreneurship is also being resourceful and finding a way to make something out of nothing. So, a lot of times if something broke on the car or something at the house, I was the one that had to figure out how to fix it. And my mom will tell you she taught me everything, but she taught me a lot. But she gave me the opportunity to learn. And that was a little bit about my childhood. So I grew up with a single mom. Like I said, living in a trailer a long time growing up. I think the trailer, she bought it for like $15,000 in 1995. And that's where I spent my entire childhood growing up.
Did you go to public schools or what was that like?
Yeah, so I went to public school, but again, everybody at public school that I went to was mostly affluent or had a little bit of money. And not only did my skin color not match for the most part, but also I was poorer than everybody else. And so trying to figure out a way to fit in or make friends, luckily I was good at basketball. So I ended up going to school on a full-ride scholarship at Southern Nazarene University. So I got good at basketball. My mom worked literally 3 jobs growing up. She worked at the Edmond YMCA. She worked for a financial firm, and then we also threw newspapers on Sunday. And so I was kind of the paper boy. I'd sit in the passenger seat, and my mom would drive around, and I had to throw the paper and hit the driveway. And so she worked every Saturday at the YMCA, and every time she had to work, her main job, she worked 8 to 6. And so if you know about public school, you get out at 2:00. Luckily, I played basketball, so I'd probably be done by 3 or 4 with practice. But after that, I had to find a way home, and then on the weekends, I'd still be in the gym. And so, I spent a lot of time in the basketball gym trying to stay out of trouble growing up, and it was good for me.
Was that kind of your release of the sports?
Most definitely, yeah. It took up 90% of my childhood. No matter if I was playing baseball, football, basketball, no matter what it was, I was best at basketball. And that's what I pursued going into college. But growing up, I played every sport you can think of, even soccer. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know as children, mostly small business owners, we even had pivots in our childhood, or at least I did. And many of the small business owners that I talked to did. For instance, mine was sitting in a accounting class, and the teacher asked, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" I think I was in maybe 10th or 11th grade. senior. But everybody went around, said the typical doctor, school teacher, all that stuff. And I was the only one that said, I want to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
And of course she said, well, what kind of business would you want to own? And I said, a landscaping business. Before I could even get that out of my mouth, the cool kid, the most popular kid in school, I wouldn't let you landscape my doghouse. And of course, everybody laughed but me. And that was my pivot in life. Like, I'm going to show you, like, I've taken enough of this abuse, living my life for everybody else, letting everybody else kind of tell me what my self-worth is and things. Did you have anything like that?
I think, yeah. So, I dealt with a lot of that growing up. I don't think there was one thing specifically that happened, but literally, like I said, growing up in a trailer, I remember some of my friends, quote unquote friends, coming over and literally eating snacks, like Swiss rolls, and throwing the trash in my yard and saying, you live in the trash.
Oh, man.
And so things like that growing up, I had a lot of motivation. I think if you ever seen your mother cry because she can't afford a bill, enough fire under your butt to get done whatever you want to, right? You never want to be in that place or that position where you feel weak. You feel like, you're not good enough or you can't provide. And so, again, from my early days, I've always found a way to make it happen. I'm super resourceful, things like that. But there is a collection of those times in my life where it's given me the motivation. Even in college, I thought I found the motivation to be able to get a degree. And it took me a long time to even figure out if college is honestly what I wanted to do or not. The only reason I went to college is because I had a full ride basketball scholarship to go to college.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of helped out. So I was almost forced to be able to do that. And honestly, sitting here today, if I didn't go to college, I don't know what path I would have went down moving forward.
So that was kind of your fuel to the fire then, just not wanting to continue that pattern. Is that what you're kind of referring to?
Yeah. Growing up on the other side of the tracks with less than and have-nots, can't look at anybody else, and that's kind of one thing I had growing up. I do have an older brother. My older brother is 15 years older than me. So, almost from my early childhood, I do not recall a time much at all, like living with my brother growing up. So it was really, and my dad and mom got divorced when I was 3, maybe 4 years old, So when I was growing up, it was just me. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, if I had to protect myself or we need some more money or something broke, it all fell back to me. And so
yeah,
it's almost a place of comfort, honestly, of being kind of like back to the wall, and having to find a way to, tighten up your laces and make something happen. So,
So you went to college and you got a degree?
Correct. Yeah. Business and marketing.
Business and marketing.
Yeah. And the cool thing about that, my overall GPA in college was, I think, a 2.4, 2.6 GPA.
Oh, yeah.
When I got to my capstone classes, so specifically for business, I had about a 3.1 and 3.2, nothing crazy. But I didn't have a lot of interest in it. I always joke about this, but I still remember my professor wanting us to read the Scarlet Letter. Like, I have no interest. I don't want to read it. I don't care about it. But it was part of literature class to be able to pass it, but I literally had no interest in reading that book. And a lot of it, I was lackadaisical, didn't pay a lot of attention into anything that didn't pique my interest. Once I got into my capstone classes, I realized I'm interested in money and entrepreneurship and how to create a profit, how to keep money, things like that. And so obviously my grades reflected my effort by something that actually piqued my interest.
Interesting. And so I find a lot of small business owners have a similar story. Obviously, we all have different stories, but similar in the fact that we had something growing up that we didn't want to continue. And then we found that itch in something. And would you consider your itch in entrepreneurship to be taking back control of your life, controlling what you could control?
I think that's the only thing we can all do, right? And so there's a lot of things that happen in this world that we can't control. One thing that, my basketball coach always told me as well growing up is like, make sure you control what you can. And so don't ever put somebody else in a position to dictate the outcome of your potential future, right? So like if you skip class, well, now somebody else probably has a decision or the power to make sure that there might be repercussions down the road. As long as I do what I'm supposed to, do ethical business, good business, pay taxes, do all that stuff, I have 100% control of my destiny, where I'm going. So that's a big driving factor for me as well.
So you've owned a few businesses, is that correct?
Yeah, quite a few.
So kind of run us through those timelines, because like myself, I've filed bankruptcy before. I've won and lost at businesses, but you pick up the pieces. So let's share your stories on how you pivoted in some of those businesses, what you learned from them, and how that's benefiting you today.
Yeah, so the high level overview, I've owned and operated 5 different businesses of 5 different verticals. I was in insurance, tried to start in the tech space, real estate, moving, and insurance. And so all of those businesses all taught me something. And I was in the insurance business from 2012 to 2017. I had that business for 5 years, had about 4 or 5 people that worked for me. We sold personal lines, commercial lines, things like that. I also had my securities license at that time, where I was able to sell financial products. I ended up selling that business because I was trying to start a tech company for lead generation, essentially what it was. But there was a time that I wanted to connect consumers with insurance agents in their area. And so I set out on this venture. And I remember our contract with farmers said that you cannot directly or indirectly refer a business away from the company or the companies, which is their umbrella of companies. And even though I wasn't directly, I probably might have been indirectly sending business away from the companies, right? By having a lead generation platform. I still think it's God's will, but at the time I really felt like everything was hitting all the points that it was supposed to, for the simple fact that my book of business was never for sale. My business partner, who I ended up going into business with, worked for the district office. And there was a guy that just came in one day looking to buy a book of business for X amount of revenue, X amount of policies in force, and in good standing. And so my book of business, there wasn't one on the market for sale that he could buy. And he kind of knew what we were doing behind the scenes and kind of where we were looking to pivot. And he talked to me, and we ended up doing a deal. And the craziest thing about that entire deal, his family even owned the bank. So you get somebody, my book of business was never for sale on the marketplace. I didn't have a buyer. I wasn't looking to sell. I was kind of going to try to do both. And guy walks in the door, family owns a bank. I tell him my price, and it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we came within $15,000 of my asking price. And even crazier than that, I still got the $15,000 because we negotiated a consulting agreement on the back end. So I got full price. It was crazy. I really just thought that the tech space is where I wanted to be. Once I got into it, I made one miscalculation, which was a big one. And we didn't accurately identify what customer acquisition cost would be. And so getting into the insurance space, even though I wasn't actually selling insurance, I had to compete with those same keywords for one click with Allstate and State Farm and Farmers and everybody else. So you could imagine just a click competing with one of the largest industries in the world. I think it was $150 a click, and a 10% conversion, you got $1,200, $1,300 just to get one conversion. And, that was a learning lesson. We ended up pulling the plug, cost a lot of money. I lost nearly $100,000 on that venture and was going broke. And so I had to make a decision. I had to sell my car. When I sold my business, I bought an S550 cash, and everything was fine. I had a couple of motorcycles, and looked up, when you're starting a business, and it was burning a lot of capital each month. And the reality was we weren't really generating any revenue because we were pre-revenue, right? So I had to pull the plug on it. I got 3 months behind on my mortgage. It's an FHA loan. What I didn't know about that is on an FHA loan, you don't get to make up a partial payment here or an extra $200 there. They make you pay the entire amount up front in full, right? So while I'm pulling out of that, I sold my car, and I sold the flip house that I had at the time too. And I ended up with, $70,000 or something left. And I knew that, again, I've never been employed since I left college. So the only option for me is to find another venture. During that time too, I also had money in Mustang Brewery, which is a brewery that I owned as well. But I had to pull out and find something different. And so the cool thing about moving, it had low capital expenditure, low overhead, low barrier to entry. It was minimal risk compared to everything else. Because if you lose on tech, you lose essentially everything you have. My thought was, with moving, it's a service-based business, which I really like. People are willing to pay you for a service they either can't do or are not willing to do. it's all air, right? It's not a material product where as long as you provide good service, there's also minimal service work on the back end. And my largest capital investment is going to be a box truck. And so if it doesn't work, I get majority of my money back out by selling the physical asset, right? So honestly, it was low risk. And then, yeah, like I said, during that time before that, I was with Mustang Brewery, and I learned a lot about that investment. We had about 8 different people, partners that were involved in that acquisition group. It was an existing business here in Oklahoma City. That business owner who founded it didn't have the right insurance coverage. If you know about Oklahoma, we have a lot of tornadoes here. Tornadoes came by, they wiped out some of his equipment, and he didn't have the capital funds, the liquid cash to be able to replace that. So we came in, purchased it, and took over ownership. So I was one of 2 active managing partners of day-to-day operations of the brewery. But what I found out is if everybody in a partnership, if the only thing that everybody brings to the table is cash, there's no real value, right? And so you can get cash from anywhere. You can get cash from a credit card. You can get it from the bank. You don't need a person to be able to do that. If that's the only thing they have to offer, the value is very, very minimal. And it's literally like American Greed. If you've seen the show, one of the partners embezzled a lot of the money. At the time, I was the youngest guy, probably put the least amount of money up. And I didn't feel comfortable asking for financial documents. I didn't know what to ask for. I didn't know how to, dot my I's and cross my T's and do that financial type of protection. And so everybody involved, people worth a lot of money. I mean, they had the same lack of procedure to check the numbers, and everybody lost out. If not, that would also still probably be active today.
Wow. So are there any consistent pivots that you've come across in each of these business ventures?
It's a good question. Part of my Tulsa location right now, I currently have partners, and I know you have a very personal experience in regards to partners.
Yeah.
And I think there's an old saying that says the only ships that don't sink are partnerships,
Only ships that don't sell.
That don't sell, yeah, are partnerships, right? And so my guys in Tulsa right now, they're great. There's no problem. And if I didn't believe in them and vice versa in me, they probably wouldn't do it. I think a consistent pivot that I've always made is more so just action, right? I posted something today on social media and it talked about ants being busy, but even ants are busy, but what are they doing, right? So being busy is not the key. That's not the want. It's not the desire. Being productive it's about being active in the marketplace. Intention, because a lot of times people want to sit behind a keyboard and maybe do some marketing stuff. I'm out in the community a lot, shaking hands and meeting people face to face. But I feel like as an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter how smart you are, how much money you have, what family you come from. If there's no action behind the plan that gets put in place or your thoughts, then at the end of the day, nothing's actually gonna take off from there. So I think that's a consistent pivot in every business. It just has to be action oriented. And,
action from a plan, though, right? Is
right,
what you're saying.
Yeah.
So the plan. How do you go about making a plan? Do you have a team that helps you? Do you do it yourself?
Are you referring to a new business or an existing business?
Whatever it is. How do you create the plan? Because I know that a lot of times when I work with small business owners as a business coach, the business owners are lacking a plan. And so when we talk about creating a plan, they just get overwhelmed. Like they don't even know where to start. And I'm always like, well, start with the end. First, if you don't even know where to start, let's start with the end. Like, where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? What does that business look like? Do you want to be in a penthouse suite, the tallest building in your city? What does that look like? And let's create the plan that makes that. How do you go about?
So every one of my plans always entails a team, right? Like, doesn't matter who you are, LeBron James or the president, everybody has a team. And I think you'd be ignorant to think that even as a small business owner, you're too good for a team, right? Like everybody needs a team. I'm not that smart of a guy. So I try to surround myself with people, including people like yourself, that I can either bounce ideas off or come up with something. I might be the creator of the idea, but at the end of the day, to be able to actually implement a plan and a strategy, I need my team behind me. Depending what the issue is, If it's an operational issue from a business standpoint, then I might consult some of my business friends, like I said, yourself included. And if it's an internal business deal, maybe a simple system of processing regarding dispatching in the morning, then I'm going to get my office team together and try to figure out something that we could do collectively. But I think there's a lot of power. Recently we just switched a couple softwares within my organization. And the first question that the sales rep asked me was, "Are you going to be making the decision here, Mr. White?" And I said, "Well, not really." I said, "Well, who's the decision maker?" I said, "Well, I'm the decision maker, but my team also has to approve that, right?" So I want people around me who can be able to do that. There's a lot, and I'm super decisive. I'm okay with making a lot of decisions, but if it's a decision that's going to affect something specifically in the organization, you'll get a lot more support from your employees or your other team members if they feel like they were actually involved in that part of the decision making. Because if I can get those guys on board, like we just integrated some AI. Right. And the AI that we integrated has facial recognition. It lets you know if you're wearing a seatbelt in the truck. It has audible commands in the truck. Well, people, even the young guys that work for me, even though they grew up on technology, people are still a little bit weird about having a camera in the truck recording you the whole time. But if I make that decision along with somebody else, it makes it a little bit easier for some of those transitions to take place.
Well, you've offered some incredible nuggets here, but I want to really specify or hone in on the one that you just talked about, because I was part of an organization where a business partner, we had probably not we, but there were at least 50 employees there. And one of the business partners decided that they were going to make the decision on the CRM, the project software that we use. Right. And never once got any of the 10 account managers involved, the salespeople. And of course, that was the biggest flop, waste of money, because it didn't work for them.
Right.
That makes sense. So for small business owners that are listening, I really want you to listen to what Daniel said. That is so important to get their buy-in. And, there's this thing that we call empowerment. We want to empower our team. And I think for some business owners that don't really clearly understand that, they think, "Oh, I can just touch you and I empower you, or I just say that you're in charge of that." No, it's getting them involved, like what you're talking about. Like, let's bring the whole team in and get everybody's opinion. That's how you empower people, because now their voice matters.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've sat in on several conference calls, and like I said, when they get to play a part in the decision or the way that the organization goes moving forward, they definitely feel empowered and they're excited. They're just as excited as I am,
Yeah.
So, if I can do that and keep employee morale, as when you have a large organization, employee morale is something that has to be measured at some point, right? You can't just because you're cutting people a paycheck or turning on the lights every day. They still need to be motivated. They still want to have something new. If something's not changing for a very long time, people become stagnant. As an owner, you always need to make sure that you're reaching out to your people and always looking for new ways to innovate to where your business is always growing. Because I promise you, just like if you have sales guys, or they see your competitors' trucks or your competitors' company when they go home every day. And if your competitors are looking better than you, whether it's via truck or their billboards or whatever, I promise you your staff is going to be looking at them and thinking, well, Daniel hadn't changed anything in 10 years. We're probably never going to grow past this point. And if they're happy with themselves personally in that level of growth, they're going to be looking towards, making a career change or going to your competitors and things like that. So,
yeah, another nugget right there. Always evolve, be adaptable. So let's go back to the day, because I think you and I met sometime maybe at the end of your insurance career, maybe that tech career, or maybe it was when Bigger, Better Mover started. I just remember you were driving trucks. You were actually doing some of the work. And so take us back to that time and share with us some of the pivots you've made along, because now you're the world's most trusted moving company. And I want to specify, because some people may not know what that really means. So I guess first, let's talk about the moving. So you move residential, commercial, state, tell us a little bit about that. And then let's go back to your early days and then how you grew up as a company.
Yeah, so we do commercial and residential moving services. We have locations in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we conduct interstate commerce as well as intrastate, so anything within the state of Oklahoma and then anywhere throughout the country. So I think we've been as far as New Jersey on the East Coast and California on the West Coast. But yeah, we conduct that commerce. In the early days of Bigger, Better Movers, it was hard. That's the best way to tell you it was hard. It's still hard a lot of days. And but I was actually doing a lot of the moves. So when I first got started, I went down to Dallas, Texas with like $9,000 in cash. It's a much larger market than Oklahoma City, right? Probably like 6 times larger. And I knew if I spent all day down there was like 2 or 3 trucks I wanted to look at. And so I brought one of my childhood friends with me and we drove down to Dallas. And I told him we're not coming back from Dallas without a truck. Like that's the deal. So kind of before Facebook marketplaces really blew up like that. So we on Craigslist just calling. Ended up getting a guy, he wanted like, $16,000 for this truck, kind of got him down to 11. I don't know. He wanted to get rid of the truck. I told him literally all I have is $9,000. And he ended up taking it. And that was my first truck. We named her Big Bertha. It was a 2001 International 4300. So that was 2017. So it was still a 16-year-old truck, right? Needed a lot of love. We drove it back. On the way back, it barely even made it. I think it was like almost a 6-hour drive back because it wouldn't go up like 40 miles an hour.
Oh, no.
It limped back to Oklahoma City. I mean, it was like the longest trip. It was stressful just getting started. Once we actually got started, I think I got matter of fact, let me step back. I had to buy a truck that weekend because the first job I had posted that I was opening a moving company, and I had already booked a job for Thursday, and it was like Saturday, and I didn't even have a truck.
No.
So I was like, I have to buy a truck like right now to even do this job. So we drive down to Dallas. I buy a truck, and literally on the very first job, the ram cylinder on the lift gate blows up like in the customer's driveway. And so the cylinder has basically oil and fluid and stuff in it to allow the lift gate to go up and down. And it literally failed on the job. I don't have a backup truck. I'm good with my hands, but you can't fix something like that right there. I mean, it was a big deal. So we ended up having to lift everything else up on the gate. First job, it was terrible. And I think I did that first job for $400, and I had 4 people out there. I mean, right now today, we'll probably charge like $2,500, $3,000 for that job. I had no idea. I never even worked for a moving company. I didn't know how rates worked. I didn't know anything at all about transportation in general. Like I just wanted to try it. And for a long time, we were underpriced, but we were also able to get a lot of market share by doing that. Of course, over time, we've leveled out our price, increased them, and then leveled out with the marketplace. But I knew nothing about it. Like I said, first job was $400. The truck, we didn't even have a place to store it. I had no real office. So we kept the truck either across the street at my house or at my buddy's house. We kind of got tickets sometimes. The cops would come by. You can't have a big truck like that parked in a residential area. Neighbors were upset. I think I still got a neighbor to this day that keeps a pretty good lawn. And I think one of the tires kind of jumped the curb and got in his lawn one day. And he's still mad about it like 5 or 6 years later. So
gosh.
It was tough. It was tough getting started.
Well, let me stop right there because not stop the show, but let me stop there because what kept you going? Because most small business owners, they question like, is this a sign? Is this a sign I'm not supposed to be doing this? You just had one thing, the truck going 40 all the way back, the cylinder blows. I'm sure there was oil and everything in their driveway, maybe just a total mess. Yeah. And you just kept on going. What inspired you to do that?
I think it kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier. When you don't have an option, I almost operate in comfort when like there's no second chance. When I was in insurance, everybody I've seen come into insurance that wanted to be successful always had a side gig, right? Like you're trying to sell real estate and you're trying to sell insurance, or you work at Pizza Hut delivering pizza and you're trying to sell insurance. Like you only have 100%. I hate when people say like 110 or, whatever. It's only 100% of what you have every single day. And that's the max. Yeah. And so if you take any of that time or energy away from what you're supposed to be focused in, it won't allow you to be as successful as possible in what you're specifically doing. And so, my stuff and what I got going on, there wasn't a second option. I didn't come from money. It's me and my mother, and I'm grown. I can't go ask my mama for money. Right. And so being in that zone, I had to make it work. As many days as I didn't want to go do a job myself, I had to figure out a way to make it work. And so it's probably why today I'm kind of so much hands off of the business, because it did take a lot of time, but I was able to create systems and processes and empower people, and then slowly remove myself from the business more than anything. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to quit 1,000 times.
Yeah.
right? Like there's plenty of days like that are difficult. But when you don't have another option, the only option is for you to create momentum or movement or progress when you keep, that's the reason that water is so powerful. If you go look at some rocks on a river that's been there 100 years, there's always going to be that deep curve in one of those rocks for the simple fact that it's just been water. Water's not the strongest, not the quickest, but it's the consistency of the water that ends up engraving that rock, right? Or cutting through the rock just because the water never stops flowing or going. And that's basically how I look at it. If you continue to wake up every day and try, there's no other option but for you to create movement and create progress.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a nice analogy. I like the water, how you don't see it. It's kind of like watching grass grow. You don't see it grow, but day after day, you look back after 7 days and it needs to be mowed again,
Yeah. Yeah.
So you were out in the field and you had a few workers with you. Kind of what was the next phase? What was that pivot that kind of got you to that next level? Because I'm sure you probably have 5, 10, 12 different levels that you noticed a jump in your business.
Yeah. So one thing about entrepreneurship is when it comes to empowering people, right? People don't want to follow somebody that, number one, isn't confident in themselves and they don't have a really strong vision. And so if you can't pass that along to somebody else and tell them how you're going to get there, there's very, very, very small chance that you're ever going to get one to follow you. And so for me, I make sure that when I step into the office every day with my team, I always put my best foot forward, and try to be that level of professionalism, that leader that maybe they want to follow, right? And so with that, you got to have a vision, you got to have documentation and systems and processes. There's a reason that checklists are a thing and they're invented, because if you give people a process that they can follow, then you can then alleviate yourself from that work. And so I've always been big, just from everything else that I've done, I've been big about systems and processes being in place and then putting people behind it. And so that's one of my favorite things about businesses is creating those and then watching them, right? And then being able to measure those at the same time. So and then figure out if it works, it doesn't work. It might be I've created plenty of bad systems. And that really helped me to grow and expand and get to the next level, because again, you only have 100% of you every single day. If I'm spending time chasing down invoices or stopping by a job site, I'm not able to focus strategically on what the next move is. Literally, not figuratively, not literally, but
yeah.
I can't focus on what's next if I'm buried in the business. And you've probably attested this too. I mean, literally 95% of entrepreneurs get stuck working in the business and never on it. And you look up and there's no new nothing that you guys have done, created, and so the reason is because they want to keep more dollars in their pocket. For the most part, probably. They don't want to hire somebody, a sales manager or this person, and pay them $50,000, $60,000 a year, or have an office manager because they say, oh, I can do it myself. But when you do it yourself, and the other common misperception is you think you're the best at everything that you do. No one does it better than you. And maybe you don't, but you have to be willing to give away some of that trust to somebody else and be willing to deal with the 5% or 10% lack of deficiency because you don't do it, but you increase deficiency on what you really should be focused on in the first place, right? We're able to close a lot more business, do a lot more deals when I'm the best my sales guy will tell you I'm a better salesperson than him.
Yeah.
He does a really good job. However, at the same time, I'm willing to deal with him maybe losing one or two that I probably could have closed for the fact of the amount of time that I get back in exchange for him heading up that entire department himself. And I pass every lead to him. And I know that every single day that he goes and sits in that seat and closes another deal and talks to another customer, he got a little bit better, right? Yeah. So he got a little bit better. And so that's all I can ask for. And I'm comfortable with that. But I think that's the reason a lot of business owners don't get to that next level and get stuck working in the business for years, right? And they don't have any free time, and then it becomes miserable, and then you do quit. You put in yourself. So
yeah, it gets me on a soapbox every time because anybody that knows me, I'm all about SOPs. So systems and processes. And I'd say probably out of this podcast, that's the one thing that I'd like to really dial in on because it's so powerful for any small business, especially the solopreneurs. And most solopreneurs will say, I don't have time to do it, or why would I document something I already know how to do? And my response is, do you always want to be doing that for the rest of your life?
Right.
If you do, don't document anything.
Yeah.
Because that's what you were talking about. Business owners, they get stuck working in the business because they're the only ones that know how to do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got so much business, they don't have time to share it with someone. So it's easier just for them to do it themselves because they can do it faster. They can do it most of the time the right way. Sometimes they'll mess up, but so you kind of experienced that because that's kind of what you were talking about. And I just want small business owners to know you always want to create the business you want to own. So in other words, like I always want to be with my documentation and systems. I always want to be like 2 to 5 years ahead of where I am. Right. So even though I may not have a full-time person, which I do for accounting, I want, when I'm ready for that accounting person, I want everything to already be documented so they can come in and do their job and I don't have to babysit.
And it makes it so much easier. I've read a lot of books. One that comes to mind talking about this is called Exit Rich. And it literally talks about creating your business for the sale, right? You should always have an exit strategy. That's either going to be your retirement plan, pivot to a new business, an expansion of your current business, whatever it is. But in order to grow, you have to have those SOPs in place for somebody else to come in and take your place. Like I take a lot of pride in my systems and processes and make sure that I don't enjoy it, but there's certain things I learned. For example, my office manager's email is no longer, Daniel at biggerbettermovers.com. It's office at biggerbettermovers.com. The reason it's office and not a first name and then at the URL of the company is for the simple fact that when that or if that position has turnover, my customers don't have to learn a new email. So they don't have to say, oh, that was Sarah. Now you got Susie. Yeah. Well, it's the whole new email. So it's office at Bigger. That's, again, a good SOP that anybody can implement that saves me time during a turnover. So if I do have a vacancy or a void for a position, I've already got the job description. I've already got the training in place. I've got a checklist of every single thing that needs to be turned off and what needs to be transferred and what needs to be turned on. And you just go through it real quick and knock it out. And it literally gives me so much free time back to be able to do what I want to do moving forward. But if you don't have stuff like that, it's imperative you do, because if not, nobody else can run your business. And if you're the only person that can run your business, it's not a business. You got a job, buddy.
Yeah, that doesn't pay very well.
Yeah. So yeah,
the SOPs, because this is critical to any business. A lot of business, I mean, you and I know the power of those, but for those that don't, they just don't take the time or won't take the time, because they think that it's just overwhelming to even think about. Every business owner that doesn't have SOPs that I say, okay, we're going to create some SOPs. And they're like, I don't even know where to start. We do a million things. And I'm like, well, I don't think you really do as much as you think you do. So I always like to use the 80-20 rule. 80% of what you do is repeated, 20%, or I don't know, vice versa. But, we're not writing a SOP for every single little thing. It's just those repeated processes. So when you started doing that, where did you start? Just so somebody has an idea of like where I could start easily and build momentum.
So if you're not hiring new staff, if you're going to go with your current team, or you can envision me, and you've worked on this before, right? Envision where you want your company in a couple of years and write down every single position that you think that you want to have in your organization, create job descriptions behind that, and then create tasks behind every single job description or role. So whether they're non-existent right now and you plan to fill those or create those jobs in the future, or if you have active jobs right now. So let's say you have an office manager, and one job is to answer the phone. One is to do customer service. One is to do whatever, right? That I want those tasks to be siloed to where like one person's responsible. When you don't assign a task to a job, then there's no accountability. And so everyone has accountability in my organization. So if there's a problem with maintenance on the truck, I know exactly who I need to talk to. If we didn't estimate a job perfectly, I know exactly who I need to talk to. But once you either have or create those jobs, just assign every single task that you do. I need to see what I do every single day. And if I'm answering phones, who gets it, right? You just make a list of every single thing you do as a business owner and then put all your jobs on the side. And every single thing that you do currently that you don't want to do, draw a line and give it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you do that, if there's training involved, you need to create training behind that. And then have a conversation with them and make sure it's a very clear conversation. It's professional, respectable, but that person understands that, hey, if anything's wrong with this, or if I didn't train you properly, that's a me and you conversation. For that reason, I don't want anybody else to do it, because if a business has no accountability, then you never know who to talk to. And so again, going back to the SOPs, I mean, it's important that you do that and you line those out like that.
Something else I've noticed about SOPs and the power of those for a business owner is it transitions you from people dependent to process dependent, because a lot of business owners, most business owners, small business owners that I know, they have one or two people on staff that if those people were to ever leave, they don't know what they would do.
Right.
And I'm like, that's people dependent.
Yeah.
When you're process dependent like you are and some of the other business owners, you don't have to worry about that, because you can bring somebody else in and they just follow your guidelines, right?
100%. Yeah. And again, because the SOPs and then having the task and stuff in place where you assign everything to it, again, allows you to be accountable, know exactly who to talk to. And then your training is so much more clear and it's concise. So when you are training somebody for that position, they know 100% up front. And what I've noticed too about creating that or maybe changing things in a job role, if you change things or assign a new task to a current job position, some employees say, well, he gave me more work and I make the same amount of money.
Yeah.
Right. So that's got to be a very clear conversation on how that additional task or responsibility may affect them. But yeah, it's something to think about, I guess. Where if you bring somebody new in, and you tell them there's 100 things to do and the last person only did 50, they won't even second guess it. They just know for this amount, this is everything you have to do, right? So it's a much better response when you bring in fresh blood with new systems that you created. Not that you don't want to keep your current people, because of course your people are good, hopefully, right? That's why they're employed by you. But you just want to make sure that when you bring in new people to the business, you go over all that up front, because if you change things later on down the road, it can be a problem.
How long do you think it took before you actually saw some results from creating your SOPs and job descriptions, functions? Because I know that's kind of one of the questions I get asked often from business owners is, when can I expect to see some results?
I'd say you start seeing them within 90 days. I mean, almost immediately. Like if it's more than 90 days, something's not right. But within 90, you'll definitely start to see results. Whether that's from the hiring, if you have high turnover, maybe you have hard labor jobs or low paying jobs on the front end that require high turnover, like maybe a cook at Taco Bell, they probably have a higher turnover rate, right? And so if you do, you want to make sure that that template for your job description is already in place. And if you have an SOP for a job description and you have a way that you recruit people, all you have to do is hit the button, turn it on, add the template, and it's right back to what you did before. So you'll start to see return that way. You'll start to see return on the process you implement. If literally you're either losing material, maybe you're losing money on each job because they're not being quoted or adding something to it. If you create a SOP, you'll see almost immediately results.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my suggestions is, what's the number one thing that just makes your skin crawl that goes on in your business with your employees? Start there. Like, let's tackle that one thing that just makes you cringe every time somebody says something or talks to a customer a certain way or doesn't fulfill a job a certain way. Start there and then implement it and hold people accountable to it, and you'll see immediate change. And then you'll get a little more motivated to create another one and another one. And then, of course, I always make sure they remember to organize those so that people can find them. And, you don't have one on your computer, one on the copier, one on a notepad somewhere else, keep them in an organized place. So we're about out of time. I want you to tell us a little bit how people can get a hold of you, how they can follow you, where you're at, social media.
Yeah. So online it's D_White_405. And then on Facebook, just Daniel White. It's a lot of Daniel Whites. It's a pretty common name. So Instagram might be easiest as DWhite405, and then Daniel White on LinkedIn as well. And I'm here in Oklahoma City. Okay.
The company name's Bigger, Better Movers. And the number there is?
Yeah. Bigger, Better Movers. It's 405-595-9589. And we did get a vanity number, which is pretty cool. It is 844 Move Now. So that'll ring all locations. Yeah.
Very cool. So, and you do residential, commercial, just as a reminder, right?
Yep.
And you move anything. Is that
Basically,
right?
yeah. Basically, move anything. Hot tubs are kind of more of the uncommon request, but we can move hot tubs as well. Basically, the only thing we won't move is baby grand pianos. Other than that, most anything we can do. We don't do tow cars as well. So
Okay. So, do you have? If you don't, that's okay. But do you have any words of wisdom, last words of wisdom to small business owners that haven't made it to where you are and where you're going?
I think the best advice is literally, so my coach told me when we were in college is you wake up every single day and every day you come to practice, you just get a little bit better. You're better today than you were yesterday. Every day as an entrepreneur, when you come to work and you clock in, you do what you got to do, you're going to be a little bit better today than you were yesterday. Make sure you're action motivated. You hold yourself accountable, because if you look in the mirror and you're willing to let yourself fail on one thing, you'll probably allow yourself to slide on something else. But definitely don't compare yourself to anybody else's journey. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs can do that, especially on social media. You don't know anything about that position, how people got to where they're at, whether they come from money, a good family, or they have experience or whatever. Maybe they have different connections, or maybe it's a local territory that you're not even from. You're from a whole nother city and a whole nother state. And so don't ever compare yourself to anybody else's journey. Just run your race, try as hard as you can every day. And at the end of the day, if you keep trying, at some point, you will see the fruits of your labor. So
solid advice. Solid advice. So I always like to ask one last question. Where will we see Daniel White and Bigger, Better Movers in 5 to 10 years?
that's a great question. So you'll see us in a couple more locations. We will have storage facilities on site as well. And so we'll have on-site storage. We will be in outside of Oklahoma. And then I also plan on transitioning them more to a little bit more to real estate. My personal goal with myself and my company is to get into storage, real estate, and then moving. So not only will we move you to a house that I probably own, and we'll store anything that doesn't fit in it. So
wow. Okay.
That's the 5-year goal.
Awesome. I love it. Well, I appreciate you. And it's been a pleasure working with you, talking with you, and also just watching you grow. And I can't wait to see those multi-locations of storages and investment properties and everything else that you got going on. So appreciate you. And I will definitely put all the information in the show notes so anyone can get a hold of you. And any last words before we sign off?
I appreciate your time. Michael Morrison's the man. He's been a great person in my life. So you're doing a heck of a job. Definitely have a lot of respect for you, and I appreciate you thinking about me.
All right. Love you, brother. We'll see you soon.
All right, brother.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
You've been listening to Small Business Pivots. A lot of small business owners are feeling stuck, bogged down, barely making ends meet. But it's Michael's passion to help you change all of it. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten some useful advice from it. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on YouTube at Business Ownership Simplified. See you next time on Small Business Pivots.